Bonjour, everyone. Guten Tag. Hello.
Hi.
Hope you guys and girls realize I am very inclusive. Shout out to everyone. But yeah, we're back again. With my boys Daniel and Hervey.
Yo.
Hi.
And yeah, before we even get into the main discussion, best recent thing we've seen.
Um, so I watched. Again, I've not watched too much recently, but randomly last weekend was just chilling on the sofa, put Sky Movies on for whatever reason, and White Chicks was on. And everyone knows that that is an absolute classic movie. It's just one of those just dumb comedies that they used to make in the 2000s, where it's just, completely wacky. Uh, I'm sure people should know what White Chicks is, but if you don't know what White Chicks is, it's the Wayans brothers, Marlon and Damon Wayans, I believe it is. They cause an injury to these two white girls that are from like the Hamptons in America, and because it's such a big deal, they have to go and impersonate them in this whatever, and it's just like a good fun dumb comedy, which I don't think they make enough of anymore. The last good one I watched was No Hard Feelings, which is one of my favorite movies of last year as well. But that's what I watched.
Yay. You want me to go next, Daniel, or is it you?
I can go next. So mine goes a couple of decades further back than yours. So I watched a bunch of stuff this week and none of it really worked out. I don't think I've closed out that many Netflix movies as I have this week in a long time. But the best movie I watched in the last week was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which I hadn't seen in many years, and it's just a joy. Like the entire thing is just creative and fun, and I wasn't impressed with it I had seen it a few times before, so I wasn't impressed by the effects, but it's just a reminder of how impressive the making of a movie can be, and we kind of take it for granted now. In the past 20 years, CGI has kind of been ubiquitous, and you can put absolutely anything on screen. And so there's this level of effort and work and creativity of how to realize a creative vision is just completely lost, apparently. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, or if you've kind of seen a making of. It's basically like a crime drama, but in a world in which toons exist, and half the characters are animated, and like everything from lighting to cartoon characters carrying physical objects, and like all of those those are all practical effects that were that were just realized without CGI, basically. And it's not only a good story and a great crime story and a great detective story, but it's also just, you can just watch it and just puzzle out, okay, how did they do this, and how much you can appreciate how much work went into making this movie happen. It was just a joy to watch.
That's good, man. Well, I actually watched a new film which came out in cinema called Baghead. It was distributed by Studio Canal. By the way, they did a terrible job distributing this film, because I just found out about it on the View website on the day it came out, because I was actually looking for something to watch. And then I see Baghead. I'm like, what the hell is this? Watch the trailer. Didn't really seem too interesting. But I said, you know what? It's a horror. I have nothing to do. I like cinema. So let me just pull up and go watch. And I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know why these companies it's like they don't distribute, like they don't market these hidden gems. They shouldn't even be hidden gems. I don't know why. Like, has anyone heard of Baghead? Have you heard of Baghead? Have you
I've
done
thought of it, but I don't even know what it's about.
Okay, well, the film was really good. Even though the first half was amazing, the second half, it wasn't disappointing, but it didn't, it just didn't live up to what I wanted it to live up to. Either way, I think the first half of the film, and obviously the concept and the way that they presented to us the plots and the dilemmas, that was really good. It was really good. Guys, I'd recommend to go and check out Baghead. sometimes the performance was a bit iffy, especially from the friend. Shout out to the friend. I forgot her name, but the main character's friend. And I think that might have been her first role. If it wasn't her first role, then the directors should have kind of like changed the way that she presented that character, because I think that's what kind of brought down the film a bit. And the second half of the film, no, not second half, I would really say the third act of the film is what kind of, actually, no, the ending was really good. But I'd say, like, you know, just before the third act, yeah, I'd probably say in the middle was a bit, it just wasn't it. But still, the movie was really good. It was really, really good. And I'm just confused why they haven't distributed, they just didn't market this film good, pretty much. But yeah, you guys should go and check out Baghead.
It's a horror movie. I probably won't, but
Alright. Well,
cool.
The main discussion, lads.
The Kitchen. Daniel Kaluuya is a co-director, actually, which I didn't know. But
co-director.
He was a co-director, yes. So his directorial debut. Jonathan, give us your thoughts.
Well, then that kind of changes things, ish. Not too much, but it does kind of change things, because this wasn't just his vision then. Okay, well, damn. I had a whole, I had just this whole, my thoughts have now been rewired. Damn. Okay, well, cool.
He did co-write it as well, so it's co-directed, co-written.
But still, it's not just his vision, though. Do you know what I'm saying? It's him and someone else's, so that kind of just does change things. And if that other person has films under his belt, then it's like, okay. But
I think they're both first-time directors, right? I haven't researched them very much, but I think they've done stuff in movies for they have extensive CVs, but not as directors, I don't think.
Okay, well then okay, fine. Then I have the same opinion. Thank you very much. Well, okay. With this film, unanswered questions, but artistic allegories which were given to us through dystopia and sci-fi, which is, by the way, one of my favorite genres, especially dystopia. So I enjoyed the film after the second half. The first half, not so much, but after the second half, I really enjoyed the movie. I wouldn't say I really enjoyed it. I said I enjoyed. I would say I had a good time watching the movie after the second half. You know, I liked how they conveyed the community from deprived areas versus police in a dystopian sci-fi way, which was a very interesting take to do. And also the effects of an absentee father. I think that was definitely something which was delivered very effectively. I think that was one of the highlights of the film. That's not a spoiler, guys, but yeah, I think that was definitely a highlight of the film. Yeah, it was a cool film, especially for their debut. That's what I was thinking, because if this wasn't his debut film, I would probably say it was a film that wasn't for me. But because it was a debut film, and because of the second half of the film, I said, okay, this film, there's something to it. It wasn't executed to a level which I wanted it to be, but it was a good debut film. Yeah.
A good start.
Yeah, exactly. It was a good start. Yeah, and but I did say there were unanswered questions, but we'll get into that. But yeah, guys, what about you? Actually, you know what?
Daniel.
You know what? Wait, hold on. Let's save Daniel to the end, because it's
okay. This might be my last appearance on this podcast, I think. So the Wikipedia page lists the Rotten Tomatoes consensus as smart sci-fi that is solidly grounded in social commentary. And I think every word in that statement is incorrect. So...
No, but do you not think there was a lot of social commentary in there?
I mean, I'm sure we can get to that, but so this movie already had some handicaps for me in terms of making me enjoy it. So this is very much a slice of life story, right? There's not a lot of plot. It's basically experiencing this community that is basically squatting in this abandoned building, and they're at constant threat of eviction from the police, right? That's the basic setup. But the bulk of the story, everything except maybe the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes, I think can be described as a slice of life story. And I just cannot get on with that. I find slice of life really boring. I've read other science fiction in that vein, and I need plot to get me engaged. And there wasn't a lot of that in there. So that's already one. Second one is lazy social commentary is one of my pet peeves. Like, in my opinion, if you're going to do that, you need to have something to say, and you need to say it well, and you need to be either persuasive or hard-hitting or something like that. And I didn't think this movie, not only did this movie not do this, it also didn't try. And then there's the science fiction angle, which is basically absent. There's some holograms scattered throughout the background, and that's kind of it as far as science fiction is concerned. And it's not just about the technology, it's also about, like, dystopian science fiction can operate on a couple of different levels, right? You can take a problem that exists today and then extrapolate it into the future and basically say, if we don't get this under control, this is how bad it's going to get. Or you can use it as an allegory for something that is happening in the present. Or it can just be a what if, right? Not just something that's divorced from what's happening in the real world and just a purely theoretical exercise of what if there's a world in which this thing exists or this circumstance is happening. And I don't think it did either of those three. And there may be a fourth or fifth option, but those are basically the three big ones in terms of how you construct a dystopian science fiction story. And it didn't do any of those, really, in my opinion. And I'm sure we're going to get into the details of that. But basically, I think this audience is this movie is taking its audience for granted, and it doesn't think it has to either entertain or has to be persuasive. And as a result, it's a pretty weak movie. I think there's some interesting ideas in there, like there's a theme of running away from responsibility. That is, and you can even, and you know, I'm sure we're going to talk about whether Izzy or Benji are the main character. But if you take the view that Izzy is the main character, then it's a story about responsibility and running away from it. And there was some decent ideas in there, and that there was certainly pieces of that there, but if that was the point of the movie, then I don't think it got enough attention, but it got too much attention to be just in the background. And then the whole thing about, like, for me, in order to enjoy the dystopian science fiction story, I have to be convinced of the scenario, right? I have to be told why this is happening, why it's necessary, why, you know, the fault lines in society are so entrenched that it has come this far, I have to be convinced that people without just being mustache twirling villains would drive a social problem to the point where it gets this bad, right? And I don't think it did that either, and I think that's the part that it actively didn't try, because it's not like no time at all is spent on establishing what the actual situation is and why it's happening and why there hasn't been a solution or what the solution would be. It kind of just trades in kind of predictable imagery where we're supposed to see, okay, good guys, bad guys, and that's kind of it. And it doesn't try to persuade us of why this is happening or why things are the way they are.
I actually agree with the comment that you made about kind of like taking the audience for granted. I think the way that they presented it to us, it was like, okay, we'll present themes that people resonate with, or we'll just present it rather than do anything with it. And I think that's what they did with like a huge chunk of the film. That's why I said the first half, I didn't really enjoy it because I just couldn't get into it. I even mentioned that to my sister and friends, like even like I watched half of the film. I said to my sister and my friend, like, yeah, this film it just isn't for me. Shout out to Daniel and all of them, man. Shout out to them. Kano, amazing actor, shout out to him, but it just isn't for me. I just can't get into it. But like I said, the second film, I got into it because now in the second half of the film was more like emotionally gripping, especially with the whole, you know, absentee father and obviously, you know, just the whole pending mystery revolving around if he is the father of the boy. So I think that was definitely a like of mine, and I think that's what kind of got me more into the film. But I do think the way that they did present the themes that they wanted to present with the whole deprived communities against the police, and the other themes which I mentioned. I think that was just kind of like given to us rather than them doing anything with it. And sorry, Harvey, sorry to cut you off. You were going to say something.
Oh, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, the reason I was so interested in Daniel's opinion of the movie is because there's a lot of like themes within the movie that resonate more with, the Black community or coming from living in the inner city. So, and I actually do agree that a lot of what was presented was done very lazily in terms of like how I was viewing the movie was, I understand what's going on. I understand why such and such is, presented in this way. But I was thinking, if someone that's not come from, this like particular background or has come from a particular area, how would they perceive the movie? Because it's not being explained to them in the right way. And I was very similar to you, Jonathan, in terms of like, I did not like this movie for the most part in the first half. It was very slow, very boring, very character driven movie. And like Daniel said as well, there's not really any plot in this film. It's just kind of like people going through life or whatever. But it wasn't until, like you said, a moment in the second half of the movie where I was like, okay, I understand what's trying to be done here. I still haven't made my mind up whether I actually do like the movie or I don't like the movie. For various reasons, which we'll get on to in the spoiler section of the talk. But there was a point where I understood what was happening, and it made me appreciate what they were trying to do more. Although people have a lot of problems with not even just the movie itself, but even the choice of what type of movie Daniel Kaluuya chose to do as well. And again, we'll touch on that as well. Actually, we can touch on it now because I feel like a lot of what's created by the Black community is always kind of like this doom and gloom, this struggle. You got things like Top Boy, you got things like this or whatever, where a lot of it is growing up in the hood. Things are going wrong. You got your like drug dealers, whatever like that. There's like always like kind of like the same themes being presented to us, and it's like I'm sure that there's more stories that can be told, especially for an actor like Daniel Kaluuya, who's appeared in so many different movies. He's appeared in like Black Panther, Get Out, The Black Messiah, and stuff like that as well. There's like other stories I'm sure he could have told. I know this one probably resonates with him quite deeply, and maybe the co-director as well, in terms of them feeling like they maybe needed to put this message out or whatever. But I don't know. That was like one of my other kind of like pet peeves with the movie as a whole.
But by the way, Get Out is a much better movie than this, and if you want to watch movies along these lines, anything made by Jordan Peele is probably 10 times better.
And just to touch on that point, I think it was key what you said about the whole appreciate. We can appreciate, and definitely, I do appreciate the film because I could see in the second half of the film what they were trying to do. It's just that, especially you made another point. It's like someone from our community will be able to understand, but other people might not. And like I said about unanswered questions, this kind of falls into that because it's like the whole beef between the community, the deprived community and the police. It was like there was unanswered questions for me there because like, why are they actually fighting? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why are they raiding these? No, like, why are they raiding their? Sorry, what were you gonna
say? I saw it as a symbol of gentrification, but done in a little bit more of an extreme case, essentially, in terms of like. Sorry, I didn't reset that.
No. I was just gonna say no. That's. I was gonna let you come to that. I was like, okay. Then it took me a while to actually figure that out. It took me a while to. Oh, okay. So these guys are pretty much trying to, gentrify them. I'm like, okay, cool. But it took me, someone from that community, time to understand. So how could you expect someone else who's not really from the community to understand? So it should have been presented in a much more understandable. But and by default is going to be artistic because it's a dystopian sci-fi film. So you didn't have to necessarily be intrinsic about it and add some sort of genius touch, but you just had to present it more in an understandable manner because by default it was already sci-fi and dystopian, so it's already going to get points for being artistic. So you just had to present it more just more understandable. But sorry, carry on.
And again, like as someone that's come from that understands the community a little bit better, it makes sense the way that they presented like kind of like the bad guys and the good guys and this and the other, because a lot of the issues that the community would have is directly with the police. It's not necessarily with kind of the people that are like the decision makers, the people that in this particular film that are limiting the water that's coming into the community or doing other things to kind of make the living conditions worse in this area, so that the people then eventually leave and move out, so that they can then take over the buildings and renovate it, and then kind of eventually gentrify the area. So things like that again make sense, but again, I understand why Daniel will just see it as, these are just like kind of good guys, bad guys, and the bad guys are just coming in and being assholes, whatever.
So the thing about that is, I have seen science fiction that touches on the same subject matter much better. Mm-hmm. So, for example, one thing that was completely missing from this was police brutality outside of the raids. Like, there's no checkpoints, there's no arbitrary searches, there's no abuse of power, there's no arbitrary arrests. Like, it's seemingly just a regular block, but every once in a while the police send in the goons. And
yeah, I get what you mean.
I think if you're talking about, we can talk about where this subject matter has been done better, but this is not a new idea, right? This is not the first time this topic has been touched on. But there are certain beats and certain tropes that you can draw on to depict police overreach, right? And what it's like to be at the mercy of somebody with a gun, right? Like a police officer in this case. And I just kept waiting for that to happen, and it just didn't. In the entire movie is absent. There's also no crime, except for that one scene where Benji gets shaken down. But that's the entirety of crime in the entire movie, right? Well, there's the I don't know what the proper term is, where they go out and smash some windows in a rich neighborhood. Mm-hmm. At the very end, that's the other incidents. But within the kitchen, there's no crime and there are no social edits. Everybody just gets along perfectly.
I don't feel like they wanted to present that. I feel like they wanted, in terms of like the community in the kitchen, they wanted to kind of show that it was like a thriving community. So you had like the Lord Kitchener, who was like shouting out, a grandma's birthday that just turned 86-year-old. It's because it's trying to highlight that, whilst you're trying to get rid of and like gentrify, the community, there's like kind of like a living soul within it, like where people have like grown up in this area, people have like had like built so many memories in these different communities and whatever like that. And of course, like there is, and I feel the same as you, where it's not really shown some of the crime within the kitchen, and also the ones that do eventually, I can't remember the name of the guy, the ones that do go on to like go and smash the shops and break into people's houses and stuff like that, they're kind of shown to be good guys still, even though they're doing these sort of like bad acts. And I feel like that's not probably truly representative of like that aspect of the community in there. But I do feel like they just wanted to show that in terms of like enhancing the gentrification side of things, is that like people have like built their lives in this community, people have like had so many memories in here, and this is what they're forcing out to then go out into like these other communities where they feel separate. They feel like they don't belong. Such as like Izzy, the main character, where his whole drive is to leave the kitchen. Like he thinks it's a shithole. He like doesn't see the beauty of it at all. But then eventually, when he gets his own property, when he gets his own place, he then kind of feels the emptiness of it. Like he feels like it's very artificial. And then again, it's not until, and again, this is a spoiler by the way, but it's not until the Lord Kitchener dies and he sees like the community come out to his funeral, and then he properly understands that. And again, like coming from the community, there'll be people that you are familiar with, people that you might not know them personally, but like it was shown that like Izzy would like listen to his like radio station and this, that, and the other. So these are like voices of the community. And then when you see what's happened to someone that is a voice of the community, it kind of like drives off that emotions and gives you a greater sense of feeling within the community, essentially. So that's kind of why I felt that the crime aspect of it wasn't as emphasized in the movie.
Just to touch on the crime point, also I think what they were trying to do is kind of show outsiders the contribution and build up to the crime. So I think that wasn't their main emphasis. I think the crime, it was definitely a build up to the big crime. But I think, like I said, they were just trying to show reasons for, like, they were just trying to show what contributes people from that community to build up to that crime. So which I understood why they didn't add so much crime, because I think they were trying to kind of derived from the obviously the norm, what we get from when it comes to these type of movies, crime. Do you know what I'm saying? I think they were trying to say, okay, let's explain. Okay, so we already the outsiders. When I say outsiders, I mean people not from that community. Outsiders, all outsiders see is crime. So let's now show them, rather than show them another, film where it's just crime. Let's actually show them a story, different stories which contribute to that crime. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's why I think as well. Also, was another reason why they didn't add crime so much. But I do understand I do get it when you say your crime point. But I think that's why they just didn't add so much crime.
It's more that if this is really such a deprived community that basically a regular existence isn't really possible, right? Then you would have some of that, and you might even have divisions within the community where some people are trying to kind of keep order and others are maybe more opportunistic, or there would be some amount of tension, or maybe you know what I mean. Like the complete absence of it was striking to me, and it's not so much that ruins the movie. It's more that
it felt like one-dimensional,
a symptom of not being thought through and not paying attention to detail.
I feel like there's a little bit of it again where you have like the gang who, everyone's sort of not experiencing the same thing within the kitchen, but then you have like the gang, and again I've forgotten the name is there, sort of the guy from Top Boy who finally left university and is actually doing something in a show.
Yeah,
but
I know you're talking about,
yeah. But like the gang side of things, it's showing them like how they feel and like the pent up sort of aggression. It's like obviously, and they're like almost like the youth within sort of there, and they've got like the pent up aggression too, sort of what's being done to them in the kitchen, where they show the other side of the kitchen where kind of like people are just like kind of like thriving and like, trying to still live some type of normal life despite the conditions that they find themselves in. And then you have like Izzy's friend that also worked at the Afterlife sort of place where he had his daughter, and he kind of like gave him the perspective of like, yeah, you think this is bad, but like, this is where my daughter lives. This is where like we were growing up. Like you kind of have to still try to see the positive. So there was a little bit of it again in the movie, but again, I feel like this movie probably is just maybe underfunded and didn't have enough budget to properly take it or like tell a full story or a full complete story, which is why I say I kind of like it, but at the same time I don't like it because of all the reasons that you're also saying in there.
I think a lot of these issues could have been fixed just with different dialogue.
Yeah.
Like this wouldn't have required new locations or more characters or anything like that. There were just very few scenes where people were actually, like, I don't want people just to explain what they're thinking, right? That's bad writing too. But there seemed to be just a lack of just communicating what the situation is and why it is as bad. Yeah. That was basically my main point. Just, Jonathan, you were going to say something.
So I was going to say, I actually think they were very one-dimensional. I think they only showed the good side of the community and they didn't really show conflict, but I think they were intentional with that. And the reason why I think they were intentional with that is because obviously that was their purpose. Like I said, they weren't trying to show, because if they were trying to show conflict, then that's been done a lot. Do you know what I'm saying? And I honestly think they were trying to do something different, and they were just trying to show the good side of the community rather than show something which is always shown to us, which is conflict, which, which consists of police versus community and people within that community versus people within that community, such as gang wars, etc. So I think they were one dimension. I don't think there was that much conflict that they maybe they should have explored that a bit more, especially with it. I think they could have done that with the whole police and the community, and they should have just kind of gone in depth with that, because the raids did really seem random. So it was like, okay, this does, like, I get they're trying to gentrify everything, but this doesn't really make sense. What's the backstory to, like, just kind of add more backstory, reveal that this is actually do something that gestures that, okay, this is why they're doing it, even though, we know that they're trying to gentrify it, but like, just, I'm saying, just give more of a backstory. So I do think there wasn't that much conflict, but I think, but it was intentional. It was one-dimensional.
Gentrification is really what's going on, because gentrification is when people move in from outside the community, and as a result, people who have lived there all their lives are priced out and can no longer afford to live there, right? And that is not what's happening here. What seems to be happening is that the building maybe used to be a council estate, but isn't anymore, and for whatever reason, they have been evicted from that building but refuse to leave, and that's when the police comes in.
Yeah, true.
I think we don't get a lot of information in terms of what's actually going on, but I think the little we get seems to suggest that.
Yeah, so but I think the main point is they're being pushed out, and and I get it, but like I said, I think they were very one-dimensional, and it was intentional, and that's not bad. Like I said, I do think there should have been some conflicts, but I do appreciate them being one-dimensional and kind of like just showing the good side of a community, because like I said, we've already seen we've seen the bad side and we've seen the good side when it comes to many other TV shows and movies. This time, it just wants to kind of like this was like their essay in form of a movie on what the community is really like and what builds a community to cause crime, and that's going to be one-dimensional. So like I said, I appreciate it, and the second half for me was done really well.
I mean, this wasn't trying to be The Wire, right? This is not that kind of story. And I'm not saying, when I say I was expecting crime, I'm not saying I was expecting that kind of story and it's a bad movie, because it isn't. It's more.
No. So I wasn't suggesting that.
In that kind of situation, you would expect some, and the complete absence of it is kind of jarring, especially when there's no explanation, and it makes the believability of the scenario harder, and also the fact that there aren't any random searches by police, right? And that nobody's being harassed by the police on a daily basis, for example. That is something that would happen in that situation as well. Or checkpoints at the edge of the kitchen, right? Or something like that. And all of that is just completely missing. So, and especially when the entire rest of the world seems to be doing fairly well, in terms of, like, there's no widespread social decay, there's no sprawling slums or anything like that, right? It seems to be just this one city block. And I don't know, it didn't sell me on the scenario is kind of my main point. And not because it tried and failed, but because it didn't try, and that is something that really annoys me in movies when the writers don't try to convince me.
I feel like they took the audience for granted, and that was going to be one of my questions. Is that sometimes you have movies made especially for a specific audience, and you then have movies which are made for maybe more sort of a wider appeal. And I feel like this is probably one of those movies where it was like, this is probably going to be viewed mostly by the Black community, so maybe this is a direct almost a letter to them, essentially, as opposed to trying to have that wider appeal to sort of more general audiences, essentially.
Yeah, but isn't kind of the things I mentioned, like arbitrary police, abuse of power, and things like that, isn't that something that would be part of that picture as well?
For sure, yeah, for sure. But I meant more so on the points of it being quite vague in terms of how it's putting across its message, essentially, and not really taking the time to make it a little bit more appealing to a wider audience.
Yeah,
I think, what? Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, I think they might have trusted us too much. And what I mean by that, even though I did say earlier on they took us for granted because they just presented it to us. Maybe they just presented it to us because they wanted us to kind of do the thinking and put the pieces together. Because think about it, right? Because the whole, police just doing random raids is okay, maybe because obviously they set in a dystopian world. The dystopian world is a new world. So maybe they wanted us to pretty much come to the conclusion that, the police have too much power in their hand in this new world. So that's why they can just come in and do random raids and do, they don't have to follow the same procedures that they would have done before the world was dystopian. You get what I'm saying? So I think maybe at times, maybe I think maybe for them they met in their minds. They're thinking, okay, we trust them to be smart enough to figure this out, and maybe that might just be it.
But does that absolve you of the need to depict any of it? Because I didn't buy that this was a dystopian future. I barely bought that it was the future.
I don't think. True. It just seemed like it was just a. And
that doesn't mean putting in more holograms, right? It's thinking, okay, how does the society work? Why is it like this? What has gone wrong in the past, and why is it impossible to fix, or why does nobody want to fix it? All of that is missing.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the world building was missing in this, in terms of the wider society.
Okay, so we've gone through. Okay, so we've kind of gone through what we disagreed with and what we didn't really like about the film. So what did we like about the film?
No, but what I mentioned, I did like about the film. I did.
Oh, okay. But
Again, it's on a scale. It's like I did.
I think I do think like our kind of dislikes kind of have overshadowed the likes. So maybe let's just recap for the audience in case they think we're bashing the film. We're not bashing the film, by the way, guys. It's just, you know, it's a mix. It's well, it's like, for me personally, this film provides mixed feelings, and I think it's kind of the same with Hervé. Daniel doesn't really like the film, rightfully so. You're saying is his opinion.
And just to be clear, I'm not bashing it because I don't like the subject matter, right? I'm bashing it because I don't even like the term bashing very much. I just have a negative opinion of it because I don't think it's well constructed. Yeah. And you know, at some point, like finish your thought, but I just want to earmark that I don't think even the story works. I think there are fundamental gaps in the story that already threw me off. But yeah, let's finish the thought first.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't watched our videos before, just know that there's been a lot of movies where we've disagreed with each other when they might like a film and I hate a film, and you know what I'm saying, vice versa. Like, for example, what was the film like Night? What was the film that Night Swim? Yeah, he loves nights. I freaking hate it. Yeah, so in no way, shape, or form, Daniel does not like the subject matter. That's not what I was trying to suggest whatsoever.
And I've he just doesn't like. It's been done better, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do have a point about that.
Yeah, carry on. Yes.
There's this widespread idea that if a good movie is one that has a message you agree with, right? That is like I encounter this attitude a lot. I'm not talking about anybody present here, just in general, people say this where basically it affirms my opinions, or it talks about an important subject or a subject I care about. Therefore, it's a good movie, and that is like one of my biggest pet peeves. In my opinion, if a movie talks about a subject I care about, I'm more critical of it than I otherwise would be, because I wanted to present my viewpoint well and ideally persuade somebody who maybe disagrees currently or hasn't considered the topic before. And so I think if you care about these issues, then you should be critical of the way this story was told. Even if a general audience is not the target, people are still going to watch it and they're going to have their thinking informed by it. And by not making its point in a way that is persuasive to somebody who doesn't already agree, that's a wasted opportunity, in my opinion. That's just my take on how these stories should be approached. And this movie did the opposite, basically.
Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, I think this is why a lot of Black films that are pushed are these type of films. Because I remember even working in the industry, a lot of the ideas, like TV industry, a lot of the ideas which were pushed to these commissioners, which they liked, was the whole Black struggle. And when you would present to them other films, like film ideas, which it's different. You know what I'm saying? When you present to them other films that's different, that doesn't have the whole Black struggle, it'd be hard for those films to actually make it. So I think people have kind of got used to this whole idea that, okay, if it's got a message, we should automatically like it. No, not at all. Like, a film with a message can be bad, and you shouldn't, kind of shy away. I'm not someone that likes to go out my way to say if film's bad. I'll just say it's not for me, but you shouldn't shy away from kind of like speaking your truth. You know what I'm saying? So So yeah.
What were you guys' thoughts on the father-son dynamic that they presented in the movie?
That was actually one of my likes. This kind of falls into the likes of what we liked about the film. I think that was done really well because of Kano's performance. And shout out to the little boy's performance too. I think that was probably his first role. Shout out to him too. But I think, Kano, he's just, I've actually come to read that this guy is a really good actor. And I think the way that they kind of executed the whole pending mystery allowed it to be more emotionally gripping, especially when he left the restaurant. The scene where he left the restaurant and went to the other side, I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. Yeah, I definitely did. Personally, for me, I think, like I said, I enjoyed the whole mystery of is he his father? In the second half of the film. So yeah, in the second half of the film, I really enjoyed that dynamic between father and son.
But is there really a mystery? It kind of just gets revealed at one point, right?
But it doesn't. Not as well. It does, because he's in the bed and he does says, "My mom told me who you are," but he doesn't answer the question. So that is still a mystery to some. Do you get what I'm saying? Because he still doesn't even want to. I don't. Either it shows that he doesn't even want to accept he's a father. Because as soon as he accepts that he's a father, then he has to take responsibility, which kind of falls into the end when he asks him again, "Are you my dad?" And then he doesn't even really answer the question, but it did. But the way he responded shows that okay, now he's ready to accept responsibility and be his father when he says, "Would you like me to be?" So it's kind of like a build up to that as well.
I feel like that was like the best part of like the film as well, is like how they kind of handled the emotions of, again, Kano's sort of the character Izzy, in terms of like his acceptance of having someone else to look after, because I feel it's like presented that he's very individualistic, has no ties to the community, lost his mother when he was young as well, hasn't got any emotional connections to any other person. Even like the boy says, my mum said that you didn't love her, but you might love me, which presents like a stupid thing where, like, I don't know why the mum was like hiding the son from him for all this time, which is really stupid in my opinion. But even scenes like when he's going to get the apartment that's outside of the kitchen or whatever, and at first I thought it was like a bit of a stupid, like, silly scene where like he's talking to like the robot, and the robot's making him repeat what he's saying, and like he's not saying things loud enough and things like that. But then when you actually think about the scene, it's like very difficult for him to like actually come to terms with his emotions and actually vocalize his emotion, having to go from a one bed to a double, to a two bed place, because he has that emotional connection with his son, but he's also finding it difficult to actually
accept responsibility
and throwing away months of work that he put into getting just that flat and having to start over.
Yeah, it's that, and he's like sacrificing that for this like newfound son that he had. And even like there was like another scene where he like, I think he abandoned the boy initially, the boy's gone out and done the crime, whatever, and like obviously he's like he's like been shocked by it, whatever, like that, and he's in the apartment and he's sat there and he's angry, and then Kano, like Izzy, comes in, and they just have that warming moment where not much is really said in there, but they're both just like kind of like sat there and then like crying and stuff like that. And it just kind of touches on some of the like difficulties between like father-son relationships, where like men are taught to be like a little bit more tough and things like that, and like not to like really be sort of super in tune with their emotions and things like that. And I feel like that was like kind of like a well-presented scene where not much needs to be said, but you kind of understand the feeling and the love between the two characters essentially, and them coming together. So I thought that was like excellently done.
I thought that was one of the strongest scenes where they didn't have to say it out loud. It really brought across the idea of what was going on for the characters. And I think if I had to pick a best thing, I would probably pick the parallelism where Izzy keeps running away from responsibility and then changes his mind at the end, right? The parallel between running away from personal ties and family and his community, like it all parallels each other, and basically all he's ever done is try to avoid responsibility, right? Because he feels it doesn't pay off or there's no point in it. And so in the end he comes back full circle and doesn't necessarily take responsibility, but kind of decides that this is where he belongs, right? This is what he should do, and so he does it.
Yeah. And I think his last line as well, of like when he asks in the final scene, like, "Are you my dad?" and he says, "Do you want me to be?" is him accepting that responsibility essentially.
Yeah.
And also, what kind of like contributed to your point, Daniel, is the way that they were performing, because you don't like the way Kane was performing, Izzy was performing. You don't really know what, which aided to the whole pending mystery, because like already we're trying to figure out. Oh, well, it was easy to figure out that he was his dad, but that's what they were trying to execute, the whole pending mystery. Already we're trying to figure out if this guy's his dad, but as well we're trying to figure him out as well, because like we already know how the son's feeling, like, and he presents it really good. He performed that really well in terms of like he's presenting, like he's trying to not show his vulnerable side to Izzy too much, but at the same time, because of what the traumatic things that just happened to his past, he's in need. No, not his past, in his present, where his mom passed away. He's in need of a parental figure. So I'm saying he's very like, at times he'll open himself but then close himself. So the son's performance amazing. Kane's performance was a highlight performance for me because like he really like you just don't know what he was thinking, which falls in with the theme. So it was like, yeah, you just don't know what he was thinking. He was very like he was 1 minute he had a lot of mood swings. 1 minute he was happy, especially when he was on the sun, but then when he's back in his environment, it's like life hits him and he's like, oh damn, all of this is going on. And then as well as this kid that's just pulled up to my door like, what's going on in life? I already had a vision of how my life was going to be. Now I'm gonna have to look after him. Can I do that? Do you know what I'm saying? So I figure that's why there was a lot of he was in conflict with himself a lot of the time, and that was presented really well because obviously, you know, he's enjoying time with his son, which we see, but then when he's pulled back into reality, when obviously, you know, when this friend pulled up on him in the club, it was like, oh, okay, so that's like the outside world. So when he's like, you know, when he's in the outside world, it's like, yeah, so I think the outside world, what's going on in the outside world, and obviously the relationship with his son, you know, we see that conflict, we see that dilemma, and he presents that well with his performance.
Do you think that would have been more impactful if the story hadn't rested on coincidences or contrivances?
Good question.
Because there's several, right? So he just happens to work in the place where the mother has her cremation ceremony, right? And then he happens to be the only one to attend to attend that ceremony other than the son, right? There's apparently nobody else in the world who cares. And then the son Benji has a conversation with him, and then is brought back to his own. He doesn't live in the kitchen, right? That was one thing that was a little bit strange, right? That he apparently lives in a fairly nice place, but then just decides to go out and seek out Izzy, and happens to find him. So, and that even if the connection is that he knew, like Izzy knew Benji's mother, and therefore took an interest in the funeral, and that's where they met. Simply, the mechanics of getting them together is entirely based on contrivances, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't even understand why Benji would just leave home and just move in into a kitchen. Like, would have been nice if there had been like a line or two that I don't even think you can make that make sense, right? It doesn't even make sense that there are no adults around. That apparently he has no other family, and if he has no other family, then there's not even a social worker or anybody, right? He just leaves and moves in this at least as it's perceived, a dangerous neighborhood, right? We know it isn't, but
he knew
from the perception here, that's what it is.
On like his like. Obviously, like his mother and that, living away from the kitchen and stuff like that, and him having no one to like be there for him. I feel like, again, that's kind of like representative of the community aspect of it. Again, it's not done well, like at all. It's not done well because there should have been like social services and stuff like that to step in. But that's just like another highlight of, you know, she's moved away from the community, and then now something's happened to her. There isn't anyone there to look after her son because there was this community essentially. Also, I just want to say that scene where they leave the afterlife place, whatever, like that, and he's asking for a lift on the bike. That's one of the funniest scenes in the movie. He's like, "It's your birthday. Don't make me tell you to. No, it's your mother's funeral. Don't make me tell you to f off." Basically,
yeah. That was a nice. I didn't find that scene funny, but it was a nice humor. Like they were being real with each other, right? In a sense, even though they didn't know each other at the part. So, but my broader point in that is kind of like, I find it harder to get invested in the character stuff if the circumstances under which these characters act is not believable. So, for example, there could have been a line about how she doesn't have any other family, right? So now that you mention it, kind of makes sense that because she moved away from the kitchen, she left her community behind and lived in a concrete shoebox the rest of her life, and therefore hasn't built a new community, right? And as somebody who doesn't even know the name of my last 5 neighbors, I can kind of like, that makes sense, right? But that is also not in the movie really. Like, and there could have been a line, like, for example, Izzy could have asked, "Hey, is anybody picking you up?" And Benji could have said, "We don't really know our neighbors," or something. Like little bit, like this is like little connective tissue that goes into telling a compelling story and make characters and their decisions believable. And there was another one I just had. Oh yeah, for example, the lack of a social worker, for example. There could have been one who's overworked and useless. Mm-hmm. And therefore Benji just wanders off. Because Izzy is the first person since his mother who has cared about him, which is not in the movie either. So that's kind of the level on which like there wasn't sufficient attention to detail and connective tissue to actually make these characters believable. Like once we get them into a room and they talk to each other and they have this bonding moment, it seems to me like that is the movie, and then the rest is kind of, we also need the other stuff. And I think that part that is clearly the focus of the movie, I think worked pretty well. It's just the entire scenario and environment and the entire foundation of the story is not just doesn't work, but is absent.
I feel like I feel like I agree with you, and that's probably why I didn't like the first half of the movie, because I didn't have that connection to the characters. They weren't doing a good job of selling the characters to you. And sorry, I know I cut you off there, Jonathan.
No, it's good. No, it's good. Sorry, Karen, I've been talking a lot.
No, it's cool. I know that's just what I would say, because like again, like I was wondering to myself why I didn't connect with the movie initially, and why it took for sort of a particular scene for me to actually eventually be like, okay, cool, like I'm starting to like get invested in the movie. But I feel like you hit the nail on the head there, because it wasn't that investment in the characters.
But I would say with the whole coincidence part, I definitely do understand. I think it was presented that way because they were building up to the scene where obviously he's in bed and he says, my mom already told me about you. So I think obviously the son already knew how, well, it's not that he knew, he wanted it to play out. He already had a plan, I'm assuming. You know what I'm saying? Because he already knew who Izzy was. And deep down, obviously the way Izzy looked at him when he first saw him, Izzy already knew who he was too. It's just that they were both kind of like playing game. Well, they weren't playing. One was playing games in a way, but not in a funny type of way, but in a way, like in a way where he wants to kind of be subtle with it, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't want to off the bat say, "You're my dad," because obviously a lot of people won't take well to that, especially from our community. They'll be like, "Whoa, whose father? I'm not your father." Then they'll run away. So yeah, I think from the son's perspective, so he kind of just wants to kind of like just build a relationship with him, because it even did, like, even at the end kind of does fall into what he said at the end when he says, when he asked him, "Are you my dad?" And then Easy responds, "You want me to be?" And then his response was, "We'll see how it goes." So that line there kind of shows why he approached it that way the whole time. It's like he was just trying to get to know him and build a relationship with him and see how they are. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas Izzy, I think deep down, like even when you first saw him, he the way he looked at him, that told us, oh, okay, so he knows the mom and he knows the boy too. This could be so and so. Yeah, I think he knew that, but he was just trying to suppress that. So in terms of the whole coincidence in that scene, I'm pretty sure the boy already knew that Izzy was there. Like obviously because he said his mom already told him about him.
And it may be that the mother picked that funeral parlor, knowing that Izzy was. But that's also not the movie, right?
True.
If the whole thing, so I think there's just stuff missing, right? So there's like I understand that, like if she had just shown up at his doorstep and said, "Hey, here's your son," I understand that might have not gotten the right reaction, right? But it's do we know why she died? Was she sick, or
I don't know why she died. No.
So I can kind of envision as a scenario in which maybe she's dying from some illness, and she knows where he works, and she knows she's going to have a funeral, and so she arranges so that they're in the same room at the same time. But that's gambling a lot on a coincidence, right? And that what I mean, like I just think it's like you can come. First of all, none of that is in the movie. Second of all, how should I say it? Like a proper story kind of introduces things like motivations and removes coincidence and contrivance as much as possible. And my main problem here is that the movie tries to get these two people into a room and to be like kind of be forced to interact with each other and realize that they're family, right? Or could be. But the entire first half of the movie, or 2/3, should have been engineering a situation that leads to them in the same room during the raid, and they can't go anywhere, and they have to talk to each other, right? That is, like, there have been other stories like this, and I think the story really suffers from not trying to do that legwork. And once we get there, it's perfect. It's pretty well written. It's pretty well acted. but there's like big chunks missing.
Yeah, and it just falls into my point about unanswered questions, which kind of creates unnecessary problems. I think if they just answer the questions, then
So for example, the whole thing about Benji just moving out, like the fact that a 13-year-old is unsupervised and can just leave and just moves into another neighborhood where he doesn't know anybody. Like clearly it's clearly there so he gets to that get to that place, and that he's the eyes-in character who experiences the kitchen for the first time, and so that's how we experience the inner workings of the kitchen, right?
I think with that, I think they were trying to show. Sorry, it's a quick play. I think they were trying to show how that society doesn't care about people from that community. But that's something which they should have presented to us,
Also
even
not-
though that's what I got. Sorry.
I feel like
Also not in the
I feel
movie.
like
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
again, I feel like, and I'll go a second point as well, but in terms of like him going to the kitchen and then like him choosing to stay there as well, I feel like what they're probably, again, and it's not explained properly explicitly in the movie, is showing how, you know, vulnerable children like that can quite easily be groomed by by like gangsters in the community to then join their cause essentially. So, you know, from them initially like kind of like troubling him, it's like them essentially like testing him to see like what kind of character he is. Will he shrink, or will he like kind of like try and like stand up for himself? And because of the fact that he did stand up for himself, they take a liking to that. So then they then start to like introduce him to like other things, and they like start to do things to entice him to sort of kind of like join them essentially by like offering him a bed and like other things in the movie. So again, I feel like a good movie should allow the audience, shouldn't have to explain everything to the audience, but I feel like with this movie, it's not explained. Like a lot of things are not explained enough basically, and a lot of things are like left to interpretation too much, and like you said, that there's too many leaps being taken. So again, as you was like explaining how he came to the kitchen, why he decided to stay there and stuff like that, it's making sense to me that it's showing him being groomed by a gang, and then again it then leads to when they're going out and committing the crime in the wider society, smashing the shops and like being in people's houses. You can see that he doesn't want to be like, he's been groomed into this gang, even though it's not done well in the movie. He's been groomed into this gang, and he's like, you know, committing these crimes, but he doesn't want to commit these crimes, but he's committing these crimes because he's part of the gang. And you know, they've explained to them like, you know, if someone like comes here and like, you know, cuts you, you have to go back there and like cut them basically, and like eye for an eye basically, and this, that, and the other. So again, it's there subtly, but it's not explained well enough to the wider audience for them to like understand it. And
I think that's where we disagree, because I think it's missing entirely. Like you could have had scenes, for example, where he's alone during the day and he tries to get help from a neighbor, and the neighbor just doesn't open the door or doesn't care, or turns him away, or even the groomed by a gang thing also, I think, kind of missing. Like we know how that works, right? We know how these groups prey on people's need for belonging and community in order to slowly acclimate them to doing things that they normally wouldn't do. And that is also not what's happening, right? They just take him in and become his family, kind of, and then it goes from 0 to 100 when it comes time for the raid.
Yeah, but that's why I feel like they're taking leaps, because like I can see what they were trying to do there, but they've taken leaps where it can quite easily be missed, because I missed it initially, and I feel like they're trying to touch on multiple different like, you know, subjects in the movie as well, where none of them are done well enough. Essentially, there's too many things going on, and they maybe could have focused on one or two things and done a really good story out of that, as opposed to trying to touch on, you know, a lot of different subjects.
Well, this falls into my last four. Yeah, I just think the unanswered question kind of overshadowed the potential of the film, but I will stand by this. I do think it was a good debut film. Like I said, debut. You know what I'm saying? I think it was a good debut film. But like I said, the unanswered questions, you know, they just should have been more clearer. I'm gonna give this film a 6. Yeah, I'm gonna give this film a 6, and that's because I think my appreciation of the film and it being a debut film and the second half of the film is what kind of contributes to my score of a 6. Yeah.
I think I'll probably agree, and I'll probably give it a 6 as well. Yeah, like once I kind of understood what they were trying to do with it, it made it a little bit better for me. But I feel like, the lack of plot in this movie really hurts it. Really hurts sort of the rewatchability of it as well, and makes it not appeal to maybe wider audiences and things like that. So, yeah, I'll give it a 6.
It was for a while number 1 or 2 on Netflix in terms of. So lots of people have watched it, and it just seems to me like it's more a movie being judged by basically who made it and why, as opposed to it actually being a good movie.
Yeah.
And it could have been both. Is kind of my point, right? I'm not saying this movie shouldn't have been made. I'm saying it should have been done well.
Yeah.
And when it comes to these films, I've even with Night Swim, because I thought that was the director's debut film. I think I was wrong. I don't think that was his debut film.
Think so, yeah.
But I was speaking in that context, and I did say I didn't like the film, but I did say I appreciate that this is his debut film. So I did give him. I don't think I gave him a low rating as well. I think it was probably 5 or 6. So when it comes to directors' debut films and them attempting and trying to do something, I can appreciate that, and I could kind of enjoy the film more and tolerate stuff that I wouldn't tolerate with other directors and in other films that are not trying to do anything. Do you know what I'm saying? So some could argue that you shouldn't rate a film like that. You should be honest to the bone. I am being honest to the bone. Like, if this was a film that wasn't a debut film, if this wasn't his debut film, probably would have given it a 4. But because it was a debut film and I see that he was attempting trying to do something, I'm like, okay, it's a 6. I can appreciate the film more and tolerate more. And
it's probably his first time writing a film as well, because he had writing credits on this as well. So again, that gives him a little bit more grace. And I've tried to be balanced. I've tried to understand what he's trying to do, but at the same time, it's just not executed as well as it could have been, basically.
Harvey, so you cut out the camera. You said that gives him a little bit more what?
Sorry?
You said that gives him a little bit more what?
It just gives him a little bit more grace, the fact that it's his first time directing a movie, first time writing a movie as well. So, for a first attempt, I can give it a little bit more grace than I would other movies. But it's good ideas executed poorly, basically.
Yeah, so I'm hesitant to even give it a grade because I don't think I don't think it's a movie. So this is like they had an outline and filmed it, right? I mean, so first of all, I think on a technical level, I think it's a solid movie. I thought the sound was a bit off in some places. In some places I had a hard time hearing people because they were either mumbling or the sound was very low. But that's my only technical complaint. I think it's shot well, it's constructed well. On a mechanical level, it's a solid movie. It's missing a story, and it's like a first draft or an outline that they just filmed. And for me, different people care about different parts of movies, right? And I care a lot about story and how it's constructed, and I care about things like structure and how information is dispensed and setup and payoff. And all of that is just missing. And the same story could have been told much, much better, even for a first time director. And I generally try to judge movies in a vacuum. Just does the movie on its own work, and what's my experience watching it? And there was just too much carelessness, and it felt very rushed in the sense of, we don't have time to tell a proper story, so we just have to get to a couple of beats that we want to get to, but we're not going to tell a full story. And on that level, I wouldn't even rate it as a complete movie.
Well, guys, there it is. Our honest opinions on this film. Yeah, man. Look, Harvey, I think this is your time to insert your special comment.
Tell us what you thought about our thoughts on the movie, whether you disagree or agree or whatever. Make sure to comment down below. And of course, do like, share, and subscribe as well.
All right, guys, you've heard it here first by Hervé. It's not Hervé. It's not Harvey. It's Hervé.
It's French.
Yeah, French. Well, yeah, guys. What are we watching next week?
Next week, it's something completely different. It's The Argyle.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a spy action movie about an author who has been writing spy thrillers, and it turns out that the books are what's the stories of those books are actually happening. I don't have huge expectations. The trailer makes it look very pretty generic and by the numbers, so we'll see.
I was actually going to say I'm not looking forward to that film. It doesn't seem like there was anything special about this movie, even though people think this is going to be the biggest box office hit of 2024. That's the reason why I'm kind of like more intrigued to see why and if so. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just why have people come up with that conclusion? So there's clearly something I'm missing. But
Yeah, I mean, I very much doubt that it's going to be that big, but it's been a dry spell for a couple of weeks where just not much was coming out in terms of big releases, and I think this is the beginning of the next wave. So let's see.
I'm just hoping for a fun movie with a story that makes sense. Please, that's all I want. Just anything better than The Beekeeper, please.
That's one film that we disagreed on. I really enjoyed The Beekeeper. These two hated it. So, guys, you're gonna see more of that.
I'll keep bashing it till the end.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.